in our village, there's no electricity. They don't have money to buy credit, so I have made this to help them in a way to communicate with their family within the country or abroad.
Imagine you pick up a phone, dial a number, and it rings. The voice on the other end is crystal clear. But here's the twist. There's no SIM card in the phone, no airtime, and no network provider. Sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, doesn't it? But it's not. This is the story of Simon Petrus, a young man who didn't wait for the world to change. He built the change himself. His invention didn't just challenge technology, it redefined the way people in Africa could communicate. And it all started with a simple, unstoppable question: why not? Simon comes from OshitishaHaihonya village in Namibia's Ohangwena region. Transport happens once daily if you're lucky. Most teenagers here dream of escaping to the city. Simon dreamed of bringing the city's technology to villages like his. Books bored him. Traditional schoolwork felt pointless. But show him a broken radio, a discarded phone, tangled wires from an old television? His eyes would light up. While other kids played football, Simon dissected electronics, trying to understand their secrets. YouTube became his university. Hours spent watching tutorials, learning how radios transmitted signals, how phones connected calls, how circuits carried electricity. In his bedroom, he was building an education that formal school couldn't provide. Then in 2012, curiosity nearly killed him. Simon found YouTube videos explaining bomb construction. His interest had nothing to do with violence. He was fascinated by the engineering, the precision required, the challenge of making something so complex actually work. So he gathered materials and attempted to recreate what he'd learned. The explosion landed him in the hospital. Most people would quit electronics forever after nearly dying. Simon did the opposite. That brush with danger ignited something deeper, a realization that his hands could build things that mattered. Real things, dangerous things, revolutionary things. His science teacher, Tammy Vadilani, recognized Simon's unusual talent and pushed him toward the Nampower National Schools competition. Simon created a machine that worked as both seed dryer and cooler, revolutionary for farmers in his region. He won first place. The judges were suspicious. Surely an adult engineer was helping this village kid. After investigation, they discovered the truth. Simon's only help came from his teachers. Everything else emerged from his own mind. While celebrating that victory, Simon was secretly working on something far more ambitious. A phone that could make calls without depending on cellular networks, using radio frequencies instead. The concept was audacious. Why should communication be held hostage by a telecom company? Why couldn't people in remote areas talk to anyone, anywhere, for free? For 2 years, Simon worked obsessively. His unemployed parents sacrificed 2,000 Namibian dollars they desperately needed for other things. Simon combined scraps from old televisions and discarded phones into something extraordinary. The result was mind-blowing. His invention included a working phone that made calls without SIM cards or airtime, plus a radio system, television receiver, light bulb, fan, and electrical socket. Everything powered by the same ingenious engineering. When he demonstrated it in 2016, Namibia went crazy. Local media covered him extensively. International attention followed. Here was a teenager from nowhere who had potentially cracked the code on free communication for Africa's rural poor. Then came the phone call that seemed to change everything. MTC, Namibia's telecommunications giant, contacted Simon personally. Tim Akanjo, their chief human capital officer, presented him with an official letter promising a full scholarship for technology studies after high school graduation. This was unprecedented. MTC typically avoided funding students straight from grade 12. But Simon had proven he could elevate telecommunications technology to greater heights. They wanted to be associated with genius. Simon's dream crystallized: become an electronics engineer, scale his invention, transform African communication forever. The future looked inevitable, except Simon was, by his teacher's admission, an average student everywhere except science. When grade 12 results arrived, he had failed. The scholarship evaporated instantly. 7 years later, when journalists asked MTC spokesperson Johnny Congo about their agreement with Simon, his response was brutal. "I only read it in the newspaper. Maybe Simon should tell you who he had spoken with." The company that once celebrated him now pretended he didn't exist. But academic failure was just the beginning. Simon's functional prototype faced regulatory nightmares. The Communication Regulatory Authority of Namibia refused to license his device because their systems didn't recognize his technology. Individual companies promised to help commercialize his invention. None followed through. Established telecom providers viewed Simon's free communication system as an existential threat to their profit models. Speaking to reporters in 2023, Simon's frustration was raw. "I expected this project to be somewhere in the world by now. I anticipated that Namibians would be using phones without SIM cards." The weight of broken promises was crushing. What's the point of introducing ideas to the nation when nothing ever comes of it? Maybe I should just keep inventing quietly, doing whatever I want on my own terms. When Cram was asked about Simon's situation, CEO Amelia Njikembua revealed part of the problem. Cran has not received any application for radio frequency certification from Mr. Simon Petrus. Here was the tragedy in microcosm. A brilliant young inventor created revolutionary technology but lacked knowledge to navigate regulatory bureaucracy. The system that should have guided him instead created barriers designed to exclude people like him. Yet Simon refused to abandon Africa. Asked if he'd take his talents overseas, his response revealed both loyalty and painful awareness. "Since childhood, I dreamed of inventing something that would stay in Africa until recognized worldwide. I prefer Africa, but I've seen too many African inventors disappear after sharing their ideas with the world." Simon's struggle represents something much bigger. Africa produces brilliant innovators constantly. Namibia alone has generated remarkable inventions. Gerson Mangdandu created the social networking platform Namhook. Joswandom W built satellite boosters from scrap materials for rural internet access. Across the continent, genius flourishes in unexpected places. Congo's Verone Manku designed the way see touchpad entirely in Brazzaville. Ugandan students built their country's first electric car. Rwanda's innovators develop impactful mobile applications. Kenyan inventors create SMS-controlled engine systems. These minds exist everywhere. So why don't their inventions reach global markets like Western innovations do? The answer lies in systemic failure. African inventors get celebrated briefly, then forgotten. Companies, governments, and wealthy individuals who could scale these innovations consistently look elsewhere. Inventors struggle alone until both they and their creations fade into obscurity. Amos Emmanuel from Innovation Bed Africa believes leadership has abandoned young African inventors. There's minimal political will toward developing innovative talents in Africa. We could lose our most promising innovators to the global north without support. Western countries built their economies on technology and science. Their inventions dominate African markets: phones, computers, cars, everything. This strengthens Western economies while Africa remains primarily a consumer market. Meanwhile, African leaders continue seeking solutions from outside the continent instead of nurturing homegrown talent. It's a poverty of mindset that may be the worst poverty of all. But Simon Petrus embodies something different. In September 2023, 7 years after his initial breakthrough, Simon graduated from Windhoek Vocational Training Center with an electronics engineering degree. The irony was perfect. Failing grade 12 led him to practical education that better served his goals. His education was ultimately funded by the Sam Nujoma Foundation and Irongo Mine, after founding president Sam Nujoma learned about Simon's invention through media coverage. At graduation, Simon reflected, "I started the SIM Less Phone project in grade 11 and finished it the following year. That was 7 years ago." His device serves as a network booster for rural areas with poor cell signal and has potential for much greater impact. Currently unemployed, Simon survives by doing basic electronic repairs. But his ambitions have evolved. "I have grander projects in the works that will exceed what I did in 2016. His critique of the system has sharpened. Governments support young innovators formally, but they don't help us take inventions to new heights. Yet Simon remains optimistic about collaboration with other young Africans. What we use now will likely disappear within years. We must prepare ourselves with required abilities. This perspective reveals Simon's character. Despite broken promises, regulatory barriers, and years of struggle, he hasn't become bitter. Instead, he's become more strategic, understanding challenges while remaining determined to find sustainable solutions. Simon's story transcends individual struggle. It represents Africa's complex relationship with innovation and technology. The continent produces brilliant minds but lacks infrastructure, institutional and financial, beyond just physical, to nurture and scale their innovations. His SIM-free phone addressed real problems facing millions of Africans in remote areas. Technology works and could transform communication for people excluded from the digital revolution. But bringing solutions to market requires regulatory support, financial backing, manufacturing capabilities, and distribution networks. It requires systems that value homegrown solutions and willingly challenge existing business models profiting from scarcity and exclusion. Simon's experience could discourage other potential inventors. When young Africans see what happened to someone so talented and determined, they might reasonably conclude the system excludes people like them. But there's another interpretation. Despite everything, Simon persisted. He completed his education, continues innovating, and remains committed to developing African solutions in Africa. He represents a generation refusing to accept that innovation must come from elsewhere. At 29, with formal engineering credentials and deep understanding of both technical and systemic challenges, Simon may be better positioned than ever to make a lasting impact. His story challenges how we think about innovation support. It raises uncomfortable questions about why certain inventors receive backing while others struggle alone. It forces us to confront the reality that the next breakthrough changing millions of lives might be sitting in a workshop in a remote village, waiting for someone to take it seriously. Simon Petrus built a phone that works without SIM cards. More importantly, he built hope that Africa's young inventors can create solutions to Africa's challenges and that the next generation won't repeat his struggles. Whether that hope becomes reality depends on all of us with power to support, invest in, and advocate for African innovation. The technology exists. The talent is there. What's missing is the will to bridge the gap between innovation and implementation. The silly boy from OshitishaHaihonya village who once nearly died building bombs has become a symbol of African innovation's potential and its challenges. His journey continues, carrying the possibility that his next invention might finally break through barriers keeping African innovation in the shadows. As Simon said recently, "If I can find a person or company truly interested in my idea, I can take it far." The question is, who will be brave enough to bet on the quiet genius from Namibia who refuses to give up?